Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today is a very special episode because I will be interviewing a friend of mine who is a real estate broker based in Singapore. So she has been in the industry for the past 5 years, and so that's it. I wanted to interview her because so that we can also get the perspective of the real estate market in Singapore, how it's doing right now, and also best practices of real estate brokers or agents in Singapore. So let me introduce to you Yunyun Wong.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Alex, for having me here.
Welcome to my channel. Thank you so much for allowing me to interview you. I know that you're so busy with real estate.
Yeah, welcome. It's my honor to be on your stage as well.
So, Yun, how did you start in the real estate industry?
Okay, so back about, I think, maybe 5 years plus, 6 years ago, I actually, prior to my real estate journey, I was working in the bank, so for quite a number of years. And
I interviewed Shah last week, and she was also in banking. She used to work at the bank.
yes, I used to work in the bank, and that time because I myself actually did out like investments. So mainly the portfolio I'm handling is stocks and properties. So and I invested in properties as well. Yes,
We're into investment banking.
investment banking like in like treasury, asset liability management side. Yeah, more internal role, managing of money internally. Yeah.
How did you get into the real estate industry? Like, was there someone who invited you to be a broker, or you just like invited yourself because you were interested in the industry?
I think that was the moment where I thought that I wanted to add more value to people because like having worked in banks for quite a number of years, I started to actually take up real estate course. I quit my job first, and I started to take a real estate course. And upon passing the course, then I thought of the next one will be the exam. And somehow for real estate examination in Singapore, I managed to pass the first time. So, and then the natural route for me was like a friend of mine was asking me that since you pass, it's not easy to pass, and why don't you start your journey on a real estate broker here? That's how I started actually.
So, is there a review? Like, how do you become a real estate broker in Singapore?
So for a real estate broker in Singapore, you need to firstly have license, and there's a minimum criteria in order to take the examinations. Like you need to have some required O levels minimum requirement, the examinations in terms of your education standards here, and then some of the criteria, the age and etc. in order to take the examinations. So after passing the real estate salesperson examination here, then that will be a license given by one of the government board in Singapore, which is called the Council of Estate Agencies. So in short, is CEA. So CEA governs all the estate agents and agencies in Singapore. So they are the ones who give us the license, and then we will decide which company we might want to work with after that.
So, how did you choose the realty that you're part of right now? Like, did someone invite you from the firm? Did you know someone?
I know someone, a friend of mine who worked in the realty company, and I thought that since the company is one of the largest company in Singapore, so and it gets that benefits of because being the larger company in Singapore, you get to enjoy a lot of partnership with big developers. So you take on some projects which the smaller companies might not have taken on. So since I was that time very new into the industry, so that leverage benefits will work better for me. So I decided to join the bigger companies out there.
So, in order to sell the properties,
Mhm.
what is the process? Like, for example, here in the Philippines,
Right.
I don't need to join, or as a broker, I don't need to join a realty or form a realty in order to sell the projects of developers because I can be accredited myself. So I just need to pass an accreditation there are some requirements, and then after that, I can sell their projects. So what is it like in Singapore?
Okay, the Singapore for projects wise is taken on by by the company themselves. So why the developers might choose to work with bigger companies is because they have a wider range of salesperson. So they have more access to the resources and the people working for them. So in here, the developers there's a preference to work with the bigger companies. So, and then that's why when we work in this bigger companies, you get a chance to enjoy the benefit. So that is the how it works here.
So the accreditation is not per broker, but it's per realty.
Yeah, it's per realty, the company itself.
Is there a possibility, like if I'm a small realty, the developer will not accredit me? Like they will choose which realties?
I think the chances I would say is low. It's not impossible, but it's lower because it's up to the smaller companies to pitch it to the developers to see how they can help them to sell off the projects earlier than the rest of the companies. Usually for developers, they also do not want to be too many companies involved because they probably might want to have one exclusive, or they probably might work with 3 companies. So that's why they choose to work with the bigger companies which have more resources and more people under them.
Like for your realty, how many manpower do you have? How many agents is your realty?
Here, right, how we work is that it's actually at a company level. So that's my company right now is called ERA Realty Network Private Limited. So it's by company level followed by the group. There's a bit like a corporate structure because this company is actually listed in Singapore. So they have a similar corporate structure like a MNC. So they have a company, then they have a group level, then they have a division level, and then yeah, so it's actually spread out quite widely. So I am in part as a division group, one of the leaders there. Then we have like people under us. So if we choose, there's actually 2 routes for a career in terms of you want to do your sales, so you're more sales driven in the career, or you want to go to the management role in terms of you have more people coming under you. So there's 2 routes. For me, I choose the more sales. It's only when there are people who want to join, then they may actually want to join under me. But right now, my division, I think it's about, exact numbers, I'm not sure, about 15 of them. Not entirely all of them under me, it's mainly under my manager. Yeah. Sorry?
Just your division.
That is my manager's division. So we work together. So for me, I have like 2 people. So it's like a structure, like the group level, and then the division. Then after that, followed by the associates.
Okay. So what is your position right now inside the company? Like you mentioned, it's like more of a corporate structure.
Right now is a senior marketing director.
What is the standard broker's fee in Singapore? Here in the Philippines, it's 5% for the brokers.
Oh, for the broker. For us, it falls under like a property types, meaning whether is it for if it's just selling and buying. Buying will depends on whether, I would say maybe the market types, because market types here we have 2 types. We have one which is from resale, the secondary market, and then the primary market will be the new launches. The new launches depends, the commission rate varies between developers, and then for the secondary market, it depends on the owner, and usually the market rate is about 2% from selling. And then the buying, if they represent another property type, which is our public housing, will be 1%. So, but for private side, is actually 2% in terms of share among the brokers. So it's for the buying side. So it depends on the market and the market types and the property types here.
Okay, so basically it's 1 to 2%.
Yes, yeah. Or even could be higher if you do like projects depending on the developers. They could actually incentivize the agents here by giving a higher commission.
So it's really different. Here in the Philippines, the standard is 5%. Although some can be lower, like if it's a private seller that you're dealing with and the property is maybe 20, 30 million and up. So sometimes they will give like 3 or 4%, but the standard is really 5%. And the developers can even give a higher professional fee, a higher broker's fee than 5% if your realty is doing well.
Ah, okay, okay. So it's quite different.
You also have an exclusive agreement with the buyer. Let's say I'm a client and I'm looking for a property in Singapore and I want to get you as my agent. So do we have an agreement? Like you will be the one to represent me in finding a property?
Yes, we can have an agreement. There's actually two parts in it. There is an exclusive agreement, there's a non-exclusive agreement. So it depends, but usually by having the benefits of exclusive, the broker will have more effort in terms of the opportunities, and because when they actually look for properties, if you tell that you've been on an exclusive agreement, will put more the other side in terms of more bargaining powers, and at least they see that you have a buyer and this buyer is exclusive to you, so they will actually more tend to work with the person, rather than on a non-exclusive agreements. But in Singapore, we do have both.
With a buyer, and if the seller is also a private seller, not a developer, the listing agreement is also exclusive.
There is also two, exclusive and non-exclusive. So there's actually various ways. That means if it's exclusive, then there's actually various strategies that maybe the broker might want to add on to market the property more than the other non-exclusive one.
Okay, so it can be exclusive or non-exclusive. Same for the buyer. It can be exclusive. Because I think in the States, there's only exclusivity.
In Philippines itself is mainly on exclusive.
In the Philippines, more commonly it's non-exclusive. There's really no exclusivity of the buyer and the seller usually. Although some sellers, there are times that they give an exclusive agreement for you to purchase their property, but it's not very common here because there's no rule, there's no law stating that it needs to be exclusive. So that's why the sellers, they prefer to let a lot of agents market their listing for them.
Okay.
For the developers there, you mentioned that they only work with 2 or 3 realties.
Yeah, company's preference. Usually, we do see often will be 3.
So it's only a few, no? Like here in the Philippines, since there are so many realties, well, if you just want to be accredited to the developer will always accept you. Even if you're just one individual broker, they will accept the accreditation.
Okay. But of course, in terms of companies, we have many brokers working under for the company. So that is where there is a very huge broker market there to working for the developer.
So, did you have a mentor when you started as a real estate broker?
I wouldn't say it's like a mentor. I do have a manager who guides me initially. So, and like today to do because being an employee, the switch in being an employee to we call it self-employed here. There's really quite a shift in terms of mindset and the ways to do things, because being employed on your own, it's kind of like there's a lot of things that needed to be done on my part, in the sense that I don't have people, like if my IT or some laptop has issue, I don't have an IT department to help me, or I don't have admin people to help me file my paperwork. So when that started, because pretty much when I started was like the individual, so that I used to have a manager that guides me to run through the day-to-day operations in terms of process, how you pitch it for exclusive, and how do you run your presentations. That much more, I would say, the mentorship comes in the external side of beyond real estate. Why do I say that? Is because there are much more things in terms of business, in terms of running the process. I actually learn much more things outside the real estate industry, because I find that the advices and the trainings that's given by the company, by the real estate industry, is mainly focused on the very technical aspects of it, but there are a lot of other soft skills and a lot of things about mindset that that the company doesn't provide. So it was actually quite a struggle for me initially. So, and I choose to actually go beyond it rather than just stay put and to learn just solely from the company or from my manager.
What were your initial struggles as a real estate agent who was still starting in the industry? And you mentioned that your experience was banking. So did you have any sales experience prior to being a broker?
Sales experience, I don't have in terms of working experience. Although last time I worked in like part-times, but I don't think that was counted. So back then I more in corporate jobs is I did more like analysis, which that part helps me because I'm quite fast in figures. In fact, I mean in terms of figures, in terms of calculations, I'm really quite fast with that. So it does help me because these are called the transferable skills. The struggle I had was, I think the biggest was the mindset, because in terms of being an employee mindset and carving out myself, the mindset was really different. Like I don't have a lot of resources and I need to search for resources, or I need to leverage on some other resources or leverage on people that could taught me to how to run the business itself. So that was I think the mindset that I need to think out of the box, because being an employee is very comfortable zone. So it's like even though what we did is of a certain level, but it's very comfortable and it's just in the box. That means day in, day out, it's just, there's not much creativity involved, and you cannot do beyond what it was because there's a lot of rules and regulations beyond it. But having with the real estate, there's so much things that an individual can do if they choose to, and that is the creativities that we pick up throughout the years.
So basically, you're saying that the way you overcame your initial difficulties was by changing your mindset, and you did this by attending seminars and trainings.
Yes, and it's outside real estate industry. The funny thing is that it's not within the real estate industries, because I found out that this is what my discovery was, because my struggle was during the mindset, and also during like, I would think that I don't agree with what some of even the skills that might be taught by the managers. I myself don't even like want to follow, because I don't think some of the is what I want to do in my own business. So I like to actually learn from business people, or learn from people that is out of my Singapore real estate industries, maybe like yourself from different countries, like how you run. I could pick up like creative thoughts, mindsets, and then from business people who run in business, because the modeling of the thoughts processing and the mindset could apply to real estate as well. So I think that was how I overcome, because I think that time initial I was a bit like rebellious also, because I was quite sticky on what I think was supposed to be done for the real estate. Yeah, rather than just selling and buying, because I think in the past was a lot of the processes in Singapore was mainly like a selling and buying. So we are acting on like a salesperson and a broker. But it's good that we slowly move on to the consultant role. That is where we need more skills. For example, we need to know like which is the best for the clients. We are not just like brokers brokering the deal together, but we are also advising on whether this is the best for this client, because not all the deals are good for all kinds of clients. And then we also need to be consultants for a bit like a banker, a bit like lawyer, sometimes can be a coach also while during the process for our clients as well. So that is the shift that I see. And the shift is also because I struggled, and then I learned from someone outside, and then I pick up, and then I change to becoming more like a consultant rather than just in the terms of broker here.
So the way that you present to your client is more on more like a consultant rather than just you're just selling to the client.
Yes, because selling is kind of easy, but it's also more like really being a consultant to the client, like what is the best positions that this client is in now, why or he or she is selling now, why he or she is buying now. So there's always a reasons behind it, and whether even the steps that the client was thinking of taking, whether is it right or wrong based on what our experience in the real estate industry is, and based on what we see from the ground. So there's a lot of things that could be value adding to the client. So now a lot of, because of this shift also, I think a few of my peers also are moving towards that kind of more advisory roles rather than just brokering the deal. So that's why we did quite a number of things together, even like simple things like repair. We also have, people resources that if the clients needs repair, then we know who to look for. So we are a bit like a one-stop service. I mean, although we are not like, our role is not to that, but we try to be that so that our clients will know that who to look out for if they have a real estate broker in future.
So more on you recommend to the client whatever service that they need.
Yes, that means usually for me, I will do a consultation first. That means even when they have a few properties in Singapore, I will also assess whether which property is good to stay put, which property is good to sell, and why they are deciding to manage. I call it like managing the portfolio restructuring, because I think in the banking terms itself, we have a portfolio restructuring. And in insurance industry, there is also I'm not sure what they exactly call here, insurance, maybe restructuring or remanagement. I'm not sure. There's a term for the insurance side. So I use this term for portfolio because this is what I see from the banking. So because in the banking itself, a relationship manager does the job. So other than in real estate, why don't we also can do the job in terms of managing the relationship with the clients, and also to restructure the property portfolio, because not all the property, if you want to keep it long term, will sustain that appreciation. Maybe they can use the money by selling off the property more appropriate in some other users in their life. So this is where I come into place to see in the overall bigger picture where they are at right now, and then whether it's okay to keep this property or whether you need to buy a bigger property or downgrade to a smaller property.
What are your best practices as a real estate broker?
Best practices in terms of like in Singapore, for me is, of course, you must be acting with integrity, and then to serve the clients to what they need. At the same time, also sometimes the clients might not may not know what they want also, or may not know what they need sometimes. So for me, I like to guide along ultimately to what they want in life. That means it's a longer term role. So I'm not sure, there is no standards in terms of the practice here, but of course there is a code of conduct that we practice in terms of, in order to continue the license, there's a code of conduct that every of the real estate broker has to follow, like the code of conduct of ethics, which is I think is one of the most important here. And we always have to add with professionalism and integrity. Whereas for me, I like to, of course, under this code of conduct, I take integrity and honesty as one of the high-level values that I see as a real estate broker. And on top of that is the rest will be like knowledge and value-added services that I see that I can do for my clients.
Yes, I agree. Integrity is very important because that will enable you to have a good relationship with your client. If the trust is there, they will just keep on coming back to you.
Yes. I think that's the best way to conduct the business.
be genuine and to be honest and put their interests first.
Yes.
What about, for example, for clients who want to view specific properties, like maybe how many properties do you usually let your clients see? Like, do you have a maximum number of properties per viewing? Because we know that if we let a client view like 10 properties, like that's too many. They wouldn't be able to remember it.
Yeah. So if
What's your maximum number? And do you have a checklist that you give to your clients so that they can make notes during the property visit?
So I cater differently to different clients as well. Usually, I agree with you. Having 10 viewings is really quite tedious and also tiring to the client too, and they cannot remember what they have seen and what is good for them. On average, I'll probably arrange about 4 to 5 like that per one incident, so that we can pause to review what is good, what is not good. Because sometimes the client needs might shift because they are not like us who has viewed the property for many countless times. So they probably viewed properties maybe once in their lifetime. I'm not sure. So some they never really go property viewing last time, and then they cannot tell us or cannot share with us. Okay, what exactly do they like to look out for, what are the criteria. So when we bring them along with for viewings, then they will notice, then we will highlight, okay, so these are the things you need to see. These are things that you cannot say during the viewing. We will talk after the viewing, and then we'll go through what you like, what you not like, what is good, what is not good for you. And then after that, we will filter down. Maybe we might arrange for more viewings, or maybe we might not. So it depends. It's actually changing along the process. I do have a checklist for each buyer, and the checklist also depending on ultimately what are the things they are look out for before I do out the checklist, so that they can take notes and remember. Yeah, that is why the agent the real estate broker is important, because we've seen a lot of properties. We are not confused, so we will know what the client is talking about if they have difficulties in remembering the property they have viewed. So that's where we are there for them.
So what usually is included in your checklist for your clients?
Usually for my checklist is like of course like price, level, which units, and the remarks is more like the conditions of the property and the facing, the directions, then and other comments that they want to put in. So other things, and also some of the criteria they might have. They might really specify to me before the viewing, so I'll put down to see whether it fulfills it. That's the list, checklist, and some of them will be also included the contact numbers of the house that is actually selling, so that I know that who I'm going to refer back to when I need that to negotiate for the deal.
So basically, it's a hard copy that they can write on.
Yes, it's a hard copy that they can write on.
Let's talk about marketing. What are your most effective marketing strategies?
Okay, so in Singapore, we have what we call as property platforms. The most effective still right now will be the property platform. There's one that is called Property Guru in Singapore. I think it's some overseas ventures as well in Malaysia. If not Malaysia, Indonesia. They do have the Property Guru platforms as well. So Property Guru is still one of the effective platforms to market the property. There are also other platforms in Singapore like 99.co, HProp, SRX, Real, So Real, if I'm not wrong, yeah, and some other iProperty. So these are all the property platforms. So apart from this platform that we can utilize, for me,
Ads focus on real estate.
Classified ads is for Singapore belongs to a little of the past, because when we don't have those internet platforms to use, people used to advertise on classifieds on newspaper, because that's where people can see the property. But right now the chances of marketing on that is still valid, but it depends on the target audience. Like for example, the older crowds, if let's say if I'm selling a bungalow here, maybe I felt that the older crowds might like this property. So then I can put in the classified ads because the older audience, mainly the elder age, they will see newspaper more than the millennials or the younger generations. So whereas the younger generation, if the property I'm targeting is something that will attract, so I also have to vary between the target audience that I'm marketing, and mostly that the audiences I'm targeting is the about 30, I would say maybe 20 plus, late 20 plus to 40, 50 plus sometimes. Yeah, so this is my audience range of ages. So I would depends on the property itself. I will change accordingly to the target audience.
How about social media? What social media platforms do you use to market your listings?
Like Facebook, Facebook is still one of the better effective method. Yeah.
Aside from Facebook, what other social media platforms do you use?
Okay, I do have a website, but again, the website is like a storefront. The only thing about having a storefront is that you need to generate leads in order to attract buyers who comes in. At this moment, my storefront is still relatively quite dormant in the sense that I didn't do a lot of marketing on it. Another one that I'm using will be I'm actually hiring like external vendor to help in terms of Facebook marketing, and as well as let's say if I have projects that I want to target, we call it the pay per click in terms of Google Ads here. So yeah, Google Ads. So but the Google Ads you have to also see, because the budget is quite a sum for Google Ads and pay per click. Then that one will have to reserve for if I think that I want to really go in. It's more on a project basis for that. Yeah, but on social media it's mainly Facebook for now. So and then I'm thinking of my storefront in future, which is I might want to go into SEO, which is another strategy for marketing, because in Singapore we still need to market actively in order to attract buyers to come in.
Same here. How about blogging? Do you have a YouTube channel that you regularly post on?
Right now, I don't, but we do have a successful case in Singapore here. They are called Property Link Brothers. So they started with the very first YouTube blogging in the sense of taking videos here. So, and then subsequently they make it a success. So I think one thing I observed is that you have to really be the first to do it, so that in order to pave the next few people to come in and follow the model in a sense. For me, I do videos also, but more from branding purposes. So people actually do videos for different purposes. Some actually take videos for the property they are selling. Some actually take videos more on education, whereas some like me will be taking videos more for branding. So it depends on different strategy. But for me, it's more for branding, and for the rest, they might be users differently. So video marketing is also on the trend in Singapore.
Yeah, it's the same here. Like more and more clients are going online. So a lot of them prefer to check out video tours first of the property before they go for an actual viewing.
Oh yeah.
That's why when I get a listing, I usually, aside from taking photos, I also take videos so that it's just easier. I just send the link on the video on my YouTube channel to my client. So it's easier for me, more convenient, so they can check out the property beforehand. So if they don't like it, then at least I wouldn't have to actually bring them to a property that they don't like.
Yes.
It's a good screening process for me. What about email marketing or text marketing? Do you still do it?
Marketing or
email marketing, like you send your newsletters.
Email marketing we don't really do here. Like I have people who want to sell through agent through the real estate brokers, they sending emails, but for me I don't really see emails. So there might be people who are still deploying that strategy, but for me I don't. It is more because here they want more like instant, so they like to see. They like to, because email is only when you check out your emails, you saw the email. So right here, the email marketing is quite slow. Oh, but of course, now I suddenly remember. I also have another marketing strategy. Is that here we do flyers, newsletter. We send it to our clients, or we send it to the area that we want to target. Yeah, that works also in Singapore.
So newsletters, you send it via mail?
Yes, either by mail, or we will hire somebody to throw the newsletter for us, door by door. I mean,
Yeah, do you have someone who helps you with your marketing, like an assistant?
Right now, I don't. So I will only hire vendors. That means if I need like a freelance vendor, for example, if I need like a flyers vendors, I will hire somebody to do for me, and then they will distribute the flyers for me. If I want to do a video on this one, then I hire somebody who do video marketing. So if I want to have somebody to do project basis, then I hire someone who did the digital marketing for me.
So it's on a per project basis. If you need someone, then you just hire.
Yes, correct. I think it's much easier for me to run this model.
What about the current real estate market in Singapore? How is the market in Singapore doing right now with the pandemic going on? Like,
okay.
Did it stay the same?
Okay, so pre-COVID times, the market is good. That's why we have quite a few number of cooling measures being imposed by the government in order to control the pricings, because they do not want it to be like Hong Kong, where they're so
Hong Kong, right? The price is one of the most expensive in the world.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
How does the government control the price increase there for real estate? Like here in the Philippines, there's no such thing. Like if the developer wants to price their projects at a certain price, then there's no control from the government. That's why here in Cagayan de Oro, there's this area called Uptown Cagayan. And 2 years ago, the selling prices were around 8 to 10,000 pesos per square. And there's one developer who launched a new subdivision in the Uptown area, and then they priced it at 14 to 16,000 per square. So there was like almost a double increase in. So the prices doubled almost overnight. So after that, all the surrounding neighborhoods also followed. So that's why the Uptown area is one of the most expensive areas here in Cagayan de Oro, but also one of the most desirable. I think the most desirable so far in terms of like location, in terms of security. So how does your government, the Singaporean government, how do they control the price increase?
Okay, so of course our government, I think that's only one word to that, data and statistics. So when we have a lot of data, we can make a decision on it and control the situation. Here, all the land actually belongs to the government, belongs to Singapore. But of course, when we bought over, let's say, because we have two property types in terms of we have public housing and we have private housings. So the public housing is owned by the government, all the public housings, and the private housings is owned by the owners who has a fractional ownership in terms of the land. So, but ultimately, all the lands belongs to the Singapore government. Okay, why do I say that? Is because when we have a change in infrastructure, they may want to take over for building roads, for buildings, pipes, all this. They will compulsorily be taken over, even for private house owner. But of course, the government will compensate them. So because of this one, the government actually did a very good job in controlling the price, because all is being controlled by the state. And how they control is go through by data and statistics. So by going through the data and statistics to know when is to cool down the market by a little bit, they will impose what we call here cooling measures. And these cooling measures are measures whereby they just want to cool down the buying cycle or buying speed. Because when
cannot buy, or the developers cannot increase.
The developers will decide the price, but the government can decide by controlling the buyers. For example, they increase the tax if people wants to buy. If they own a property here, they want to buy the second one, the third one, they will have higher taxes because it means they can afford. So they want to buy my properties. So that's why they increase the tax, and they also increase the land where they need to hold the property. For example, so that because there's one time whereby property that was like in 20, well, that was about maybe close to 13, 14 years ago, there was a moment whereby people treat properties, selling and buying like investing in stocks. Like today I buy, I can sell it tomorrow, and I can earn 200, 300,000, Singapore dollars.
The fast overnight?
Yes, so they can trade, they do like trading. So they sell and buy properties like trading. So that was the time that the government realized that, oh no, I couldn't when there's a lot of speculators coming in, then they will tend to make the prices, they will lead to that price spike in the housing. So in order to stop that, they say that, oh no, you cannot sell the property. If you want to sell the property the next day, you got to pay a lot of tax. So people will think twice of like, oh no, I cannot sell, so I need to pay higher tax.
The buying and selling process through taxation.
Yes, correct. So that they will increase the
taxes there.
Sorry?
How much are your property taxes? Like, do you have like a fixed percentage of the taxes that a buyer would have to pay when buying a property? And a seller also when selling a property, like what are the taxes?
Like for example, okay, right now the current one, because they changed a few times. So the current one is for selling. If you want to sell, let's say the next day, for example, there will be a 12. So it depends on the number of years. There's a 3 years holding for a residential property here. That means if you want to sell in the first year, it will be 12%, followed by the 8% in the second year, and the third year will be 4%. So after 3 years is being fulfilled, there will be 0% in terms of selling the property. So the minimum.
There's no tax after 3 years?
Yes, there's no tax after 3 years. Yes. It's only the holding of property. But of course, in buying, there's other taxes as well. So this is only for the selling part.
So that's just for the selling?
Yeah, that's just for the selling.
That's are for the selling. So but still good. But if I'm a buyer, what are the taxes in buying? So it's different. Like you have taxes for buying and taxes for selling.
Yes, correct. So in terms of...
It's the same. It's the same tax. Like there's a group of taxes that you have to pay, whether you're a buyer or a seller. So you will just have to agree on whether the buyer or seller pays. But usually it's the buyer who pays. Like the seller just wants a net amount, and the buyer will usually pay for the rest. Or sometimes the seller will include the capital gains tax in the selling price. But lately, it's usually the sellers, they usually prefer to just let the buyers pay for everything.
Wow.
And the taxes in the Philippines are quite high. It's around 9.5%.
In terms of selling.
Yeah, it's 9.5%. And there are 3 different bases on the tax. So it's either based on the selling price on the deed of sale, the zonal value, or the market value, whichever is higher. So taxation here is quite high for selling real estate. So the buyer will need to pay for the selling price plus the tax. And the taxes has to be paid in cash. So they will need, if it's a private listing, the buyer will need an amount of money, like a cash amount, ready for tax payment.
Wow, okay.
How about for the buying, the buyer's tax?
The buyer tax will depends also on the citizenship of the buyers. For example, if it's a Singapore citizen, the first property there's no that one is additional buying stamp duty. Okay, we talk about the normal buying stamp duty. So there's a 1 million cap in Singapore dollars, 1 million. So below a 1 million, there's a 3% minus. There's a formula to it. Will be 3% minus $5,400 here. Whereas it's above 1 million, will be 4% minus 15,400. But nowadays the property prices in Singapore most of the time is over a million, unless it's those smaller units in public housing. And then this is the standard buyer stamp duty, which all the buyers will have to pay for it. Whereas for the additional buyer stamp duty, we have another second tier. So it depends on whether it's a Singapore citizens or permanent residents here or foreigner. So and it also depends on the kind of property that the person owns. So there's a table to it. So in generally, even for Singapore citizens, the first property they buy, they don't need to pay the additional buyer stamp duty. But subsequently, once to buy, they have to pay like a 12% and 15% later on. And for permanent residents will be a 15. And for foreigner to invest in property here, they have to pay a 20% tax throughout. That means on every property they buy. So
that's so expensive. Like foreigners, in order for them to buy property in Singapore, they have to pay 20%.
Yes, additional.
And so, what's the basis of that? The selling price.
The selling price.
So, in order for foreigners, can foreigners get a discount on the tax, or is there a way to like decrease the tax payable by foreigners? Because there are a lot of foreigners in Singapore.
There are a lot of foreigners in Singapore, staying in Singapore renting, and also a lot of foreigners buying properties in Singapore. Yeah.
So even if you're not a resident or you're not like a Singaporean citizen, you can buy property. It's just that the tax is higher.
Yes, we do have some of the trade agreement, foreign trade agreement with, I think foreign tax agreement or trade agreement with some of the countries, like an American who buy a property in Singapore, they will be treated like a Singapore citizens. So there are some countries that the Singapore government works together with them in order to have the same treatment as the Singapore citizens. But most of the foreigners here will have to pay that tax. But again, because Singapore is positioned as a very strong, stable place, and they don't see that the property prices are going to be dropped, much drastically, even with post-COVID. During we have a lockdown here before about 2 months, and then right now we are post. We are still in COVID situations, but it has been a very stable, and people are really going out, spending money, looking at properties and buying again.
How are the malls there, like the traditional businesses, the malls? How are they doing in Singapore?
They are doing okay right now, very okay, and business have been very good nowadays because people are back to consumption. Even in terms of renting houses, although sadly, of course, what happened was that because we have a few jobs that is occupied by foreigners, they are considered expats here. But usually when the economy was down, I think it applies to any country out there, they tend to retrench the foreigners first because of if the business are not doing well. Then the foreigners would no longer have to rent the house, they might want to go back to their own country. But it's also good that we have currently we have a very strong local consumption in terms of malls, in terms of buying food, buying your groceries, a lot of very strong local consumption. So whoever that stays here, they tend to spend a lot of money internally because they have nowhere to travel to. So that's how we spend the money in. They went to malls, they buy a lot of stuff. They went to online, they buy a lot of things. And even for houses, right, those houses that is vacant or vacated by foreigners, the locals themselves, they rent a house from us. So it's a very interesting change in terms of that behavior.
So how has COVID affected the real estate market in Singapore?
We think that last 2 months, I think it's badly affected because we are not allowed to do viewings. The demands are very low because people are scared, people are confused of what is next. But right now in Singapore, I think we are not scared going out because people tend to adjust to the new normal, and they thought that okay, now they are working from home, but they are very happy to go out because they can't travel. Because the locals here love traveling a lot. If they can't travel, they will have to spend their money in locally. So nowadays, they really there's a very strong local consumption economy in Singapore here. That means people really spend the money here, and
It's just local. Like you're not really allowed to go out of the country yet.
yes, we are not allowed to go to the country because unless it's for business purpose. Usually, if it's for
Not for,
leisure,
not for leisure. Like for business, okay.
yeah, for business is okay. So which majority of them, I don't think even for business, like some of my friends, business, they are not keen to travel for business. So they rather like stay in Singapore because they feel that Singapore is the safest right now to be here. Yeah, so that's how our property managed to be very resilient, and I think they will have more foreigners coming back to see at it, to look at the Singapore market back again because they kind of like the economy here, and it's more stable, more in terms of safe, and people are still having jobs. Yeah.
So not a lot of businesses in Singapore closed down.
We do have businesses closed down usually in F&B, and also these businesses are like they are more those that is not able to adopt for online. Now, there's the traditional business like they do suffer quite a lot during the lockdown because people are not patronizing it. But right now, people are coming out to patronize them, so they are better positioned. So, but previously, it was really bad. So, for maybe business that is not very strong anyway, they just suffer and they close down. But if they are strong enough to just hold on for a few months, they are all back in action right now again, and their business flourish once again. So that is the difference between the business who close down and the business that is able to sustain that few months for no income, nobody having for the local consumptions. Yeah, so if they're able to hold that periods of the months, I think that right now it's all fine for them. And it's also good that because our government actually throwing a lot of budget plans, or we call it resilience plans, to offer those businesses that are suffering at that time some of the payouts for them to sustain, hold up for a few months until people start to come back, and then business start to come back. So there's a lot of initiatives set up by the government.
A lot of help from the government for the struggling businesses.
Yes, and also to reskill the employees because not all the employees are also spec, mainly because their business are like, for example, tourism, hotel related, aviations, F&B used to suffer as well, but now it's okay. So these are the airlines, even our airlines, because we cannot fly. A lot of Singapore Airlines people will suffer quite a lot, and some are still waiting probably to be retrenched. I'm not sure. Some of them already retrenched. So, and the government offered them to position them in more demand, in high demand industry like healthcare, transportations, to help out in terms of customer service because that's where their strength is. So they actually deploy of the resources to other industry that is driven by the demand. So our government did a good job to offer that resilient package to failing business, and also to still deploy our resources to other areas that we need the manpower, because that time was like healthcare was one of the number one that they need a lot of people to help out. It was when there was really a huge spike in COVID-19 cases, and that was a moment that they needed a lot of help from there. So they deploy a lot of resources to that area.
Okay. At least there in Singapore, it's good because the government is really helping out like the people and the business owners who are struggling right now. Here in the Philippines, there is something like that, but maybe not as efficient, maybe as Singapore, because you can get a loan here from a government agency called BPI, but it's really not enough because the resources of the government are also very limited, especially since the government has spent a lot in helping out like the unemployed, those who became unemployed, and the poor. So yeah, that's the struggle here of businessmen. It's the small to medium business enterprises that are really suffering right now because of the pandemic. Because for the big businesses, the big companies, they can, they can still survive. They can still make money. But the small to medium businesses, they can really suffer. they have the cash to tide them over until the economy becomes okay again.
Okay.
What about the leasing market? How's the leasing market doing in Singapore right now?
Leasing market is probably not as good as last time because of the foreigners returning back to their own country, and some is because of retrenchment. Of course, some is more online. They probably discover that they want to spend more time with the family, having been abroad for some time, and because of COVID-19 probably escalate their thoughts of returning back. So the rental rate, it depends on sometimes it change. For example, there was a moment whereby Malaysia starts to open up to Singapore. That means when they have a lockdown, the Malaysians who were working in Singapore, they couldn't return back. So once there was a period where they decided to open up, a lot of Malaysians came to, and our source of the rental, a lot of them came from Malaysia. So when they open up, then a lot of Malaysians want to rent, and they usually rent in terms of public housing. So because they have a lower budget in terms of that, whereas the many for the working professionals, they have a higher budget. So the private housing rentals do suffer a little bit because there's lesser foreigners out there. But the public housing rentals seems to have a more demands in there, and the landlord seems also to have a more bargaining power. So for leasing part, it's mainly now filled by local consumptions. That means people who, for locals, that they do have a house. For here, right, they usually stay with the parents. And because of working from home, they probably find that the space in their homes is not too big, or there's a lot of disruption, within the family. So they want to actually work, stay somewhere else, and that is where they rent the houses from. So we still have supplies in terms of from locals themselves, and but in terms of leasing in the private side is not as good as in the past of the pre-COVID. But the public house rental side seems to be still strong.
That's understandable since there's not a lot of people traveling right now. So it's really understandable that the demand for leasing has decreased.
Yes, yeah. Then there's a lot of foreigners coming in also, because we also bar a lot of foreigners for coming in. Probably one or two, I think slowly they are opening up, because from the ground itself, I could sense there's more foreigners started to come in again. So the government actually did a good job in terms of fine-tuning it, when to allow, when not to allow, when to stop it, and when to lock down. So there's different stages, and a lot of changes been happening around here.
So what are the usual rental rates there in Singapore?
Quite a bit.
Do you have houses for rent or more on condominiums?
We have landed houses for rent. Most of it here is condominiums for private. But for the landed houses, like a bungalow or a detached or semi-detached house to rent here, usually buyers or the owners will tend to stay, because the yield for a landed housing here is not as good as condominiums. So for investors who want to invest, they usually invest in condominiums where they can allow for homestay and also for investment purposes. So the rental rate actually varies quite a lot depending on the district itself. Because in the outskirts, although Singapore is pretty small, but we do have what we term as a bit outskirt from the central area. Because to us, it's like traveling an hour sounds a bit too long. That is like a lot of things that a lot of my overseas friends are telling me. An hour travel is long. They couldn't get that, but here it's like an hour travel seems long for people. They were like, the limit is a long traveling time. So they usually depends on where they want to stay, whether it's nearer to the office or nearer to where they access to malls, all these things. So it varies quite a lot. There's a big range, and also depends on whether it's public or private housing as well.
For condominiums, like what's the range also for the selling prices there?
The condominiums, let's say if we are talking about private housings, a one bedroom right now for private, I would say that it probably the most affordable is about 500,000 plus. about 500,000 for in Singapore dollars. It can range to the bigger houses in terms of condominiums. There's a wide range about 5 million plus 6 million.
How big is a one bedroom? The one that's 500,000.
It's about 400 square feet.
I'll convert that because here it's square meters. So I just converted it like 500 Singaporean dollars. I think the exchange rate now is around 30 pesos, 30 plus. So it's roughly around 50 million pesos. Square feet. So what's the size again?
400.
About 100. I'll convert it later. So what is usually your sales strategy when you like meet buyers or even sellers? Like how do you position yourself?
For me, my clients are a lot by referrals. So when they referrals, they kind of know me in a sense from someone else. So I don't need to do that much pitching in terms of who I am, where they come from, how do I work in this industry, etc. But I would also depends on. So for that part, I usually only leave it when for someone that I never met. And how I position myself is that I will go through with them, let's say if they want to sell the house, a plan in the future, because I'll ask more questions in the sense that it's more for longer term. We are not just for just selling or buying a next house for shorter term. I will even ask them that what do they want in future? Do they want to buy multiple properties in Singapore, or they have no interest, do they actually invest their money, or how do they because I came from a more investment banking background, so I actually leverage on this experience to more guide them into having plan for the time and more financial independence in future. So unless if they are not interested, because I do have clients that are very comfortable in just getting a job, work, and doesn't want to invest, it's fine for them because it depends on different agendas and the objective of individuals. So, but for me, I like to actually guide them along what is the plan and in future, or so that I can plan out the strategy in between, because a lot of strategies at the front will depend on what they want in the long term. So, and you will tweak accordingly to their needs, depending on their family needs, because they might change. Sometimes they might say that I want to be near my kids' school. So then they needed some place to be positioned near where the kids' school are. So some they might say that I want to own multiple properties. Then now it's like, okay, so I have that plan moving forward. So the first step now you should do what? So that is more on a consultation basis. And then of course finally I have other strategy in terms of increase the speed of selling. Like for example, other than video marketing that might want to throw in, there's another service that I might see. It also depends on the situation that time. We call it home staging service. Home staging service is whereby usually we dress up the property to make it like a showroom, like a showroom.
Property, or you do it yourself? Like you buy all the stuff, or you rent it out?
There's two parts I can do. I done before that I buy the furniture and then I hired somebody to dress up in terms of accessorize. There's another vendor that I'm using is that it's all in one service. They provide the furniture and the dressing up and the video also. So it depends on the which part or where the house is and how is the house is also. Sometimes I don't need to use the home staging service. It's because the target audience that comes in, they don't appeal to the home staging service. So it varies quite a lot depending on that. So it's like a customized plan for the client.
So let's talk about like your monthly quota. Are you comfortable sharing what your monthly quota is? Is it that for the team or for you also just an individual?
We don't have like a quota in order to hit before. That means there's no.
For the realty, like did the realty give you a quota, and if you can't hit it, is there like a penalty or something?
No, we don't. So it's really up to us that we think that maybe this month, for example, like last year, I don't have a quota, but I have a target myself So once I'm quite near it, then I like, okay, I can maybe the rest of the months I can do my traveling, and that's what I did last year. For this year, then because no travel, so the really much things that I can do is I just like either continue to revamp like the existing strategy that that whether it still fits in the post normal, the new normal right now, or I actually add more other value added services. So I spend the time more on that instead of, so we don't have a quota to hit. It's really pretty much of us to how we want to target on the every year basis.
What is it okay to share your quota? The quota set by the realty or your personal quota?
For me, I set myself with every 10,000 in Singapore dollars every month. So that is my target. That means if I can hit more than that, I depends on whether I want to slow down for the next month or I still want to continue hitting or I want to increase up to it.
How much do you have to sell? Like, what would be the total price of all the properties you would have to sell in order to hit 10,000?
Oh, 10,000 mean, okay, so if I do like a public housing, it's quite easy in the sense that if I did, for example, a selling of public housing of a 500,000 selling price, then I will hit that 10,000 dollars every month. But I need to sell that one public housing. So I take it as a benchmark. So if I don't have a public housing, then I will have to hit a private housing, and that it also depends on the commission, the commission that I get from the owners. Then if not, I will zoom down to leasing of the units. So rental wise, I will have to hit about, in order to hit the 10,000, I will do multiple, maybe about 5 units to rent it out per month in order to hit that 10,000. So, and I need to have a 2 years lease because in terms of rental rate, the commission depends on the number of years lease as well, also about the quantum of the rental rate. Usually it's about 2,000 to 6,000 Singapore dollars, depending on the, usually I do private housing, so depending on the size, it's usually about 2,000 to 6,000. So I will need to hit a few times before I reach my 10,000 Singapore dollars.
So in terms of selling, it's around one property per month.
One public housing per month.
So my last question is, what are the 3 characteristics that you think an entrepreneur should have?
Well, that's a good question. So there are a lot of characteristics an entrepreneur should have, but probably I'll name it. Well, there's quite a lot. Okay, I would say that integrity. Three of them will be integrity, because I always believe that in terms of being an entrepreneurship, every entrepreneur will have to have the highest code of conduct in the sense of everything that we do, we really have to act with integrity, and it conforms to the ethics, the code of conduct. 2, I would say is being play to the strength. That means there's a lot of, for me, I would have said that there's a lot of noises in the market in the sense that some people might mean it good by showing or by training or model an individual to be like that. But not all the people in this world are the same. So I would say as an entrepreneur, you have to play to the strength. There's always a market in or a target audience in your own area. Don't have to always follow what other people are doing it. So that is where the noises are. When people are doing that, it doesn't appeal or doesn't apply to what we can do as an individual. So finding our own strength is very important. And of course, thirdly will be care. I think care and professionalism. So being an entrepreneur, of course, professionalism needs to be there, and care meaning that that is the most important, that whoever that we serve will be the utmost care and importance to how we actually conduct our business with. So I think this is 3 will summarize what I think is important as an entrepreneur.
Okay. Thank you so much, Yunyun. Thank you for your time. I really learned a lot from you today.
Yeah, no, my pleasure to be on your stage.
Hope we can catch up again soon so we can update each other on how the real estate market is doing in our respective countries.
Yes, I hope to hear from you soon as well. Like, how's everything going on? And I mean, well, hopefully one day I'll come back to Philippines. I really love to come back again.
Yeah. Both you and Cohen are very much welcome every time in the event that you decide to travel again in the Philippines once COVID is over.
Yes, we will actually.
Okay, so thank you again, and I hope to see you again next time.
Okay, thank you, Alex. See you guys. Bye bye.